This is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
Got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, GOG. Let's go. What do you think tonight?
You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the
Let's
Warriors.
go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like
above our head for the players.
literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
Starting now.
Oh my, I'm so sorry,
Starting now, folks.
guys. My Wi-Fi is going through it right now. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Rob Atan, with my two co-hosts, Seamus Zarlingo and Randy Elfman. I apologize about that. Guys, the Celtics tonight, they put down a show out in South Beach. 103-85 was the final score. Guys, I'm going to send – I know this isn't conventional. I'm going to send us off right into initial thoughts, reactions, and takeaways just so I can fix my Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, I'll take it. Really, Rob, we talked about it kind of before the show aired. It was just a typical Monday night game in Miami, a game that we should win. We should have won on paper. We had just a better team. And tonight, what really stood out to me was different guys kind of took over different quarters, right? Early on, we started off 11% from 3 in the first quarter, right? And from a team that is arguably one of the best three-point shooting teams in the history of the NBA, starting out 11% from 3 is not what you want to see. But who was it that really picked us out of a grave in the first quarter? It was Sam Hauser with multiple threes, kind of just kept us in the game. And then in the second quarter, it was all Celtics, right? It was all Peyton Pritchard. In the third quarter, Tatum, 20 points, and that's where we kind of just ran away. And fourth quarter, I don't want to say it was really a domination by a player. It was just veteran leadership by a team that just knew how to close out a game. That's really what it came down to. Guys dominating in each quarter, and then the fourth quarter came around, and we just closed it out. And it was great to see. It honestly gives me some hope. Back-to-back wins against playoff teams. Well, maybe not. Miami. Honestly, off that point, I don't even know what Miami's doing. Are they in win now mode? Are they in I want to push for the play-in game? I really have no idea the direction that Miami wants to go right now. I'm confused. They trade away Jimmy Butler because he wanted to go, but they trade away their star player. They still have some talent on the team. I have no idea what direction they're going, but ultimately, nonetheless, the Celtics coming to Miami take care of business in a fashion that they honestly should have, because coming off a Tatum 40 ball and now 33, I think we're gaining some momentum in the Eastern Conference, not even just standing-wise, but I think we're starting to put some teams on notice, not only just in the East, but in all the NBA, right? We're starting to beat some good teams, and obviously good teams have bad games. We're going to have those games where we lose to the Hornets and the Pistons, but those games are behind us, and now we can move on to beating good teams like the Knicks, the Heat, the Nuggets, the Warriors. We're going down the right path, and tonight was a really encouraging sign that the Celtics are going to continue playing some really good basketball.
Well, give us the Miami Heat in round one, because the Miami Heat, they are a patented 8 seed right now. That's exactly what their lineup looks like. And yes, there were a couple of key players missing from tonight's game from both sides of the ball, of course. For the Celtics, no Drew Holiday tonight, no Jaylen Brown. And for the Miami Heat, no Tyler Hero in this game. Really, their best player, their all-star on this season. So this game was not exactly the full Miami Heat versus the full Boston Celtics, but you could just tell within the lineups who was the superior team in this particular matchup, because the Miami Heat, they really look like an 8 seed right now. They look like that patented play-in team. They really don't have a star player anymore. If you want to say Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, sure, but I was on the post game the other night and we were talking about those are C-listers. Those are B-list all-stars right there. They're not the A-listers of the NBA whatsoever, and they're really on that next tier of all-stars. Yes, they're really good players in the league, but they're not the players who are going to uplift the ceiling of one's team and really bring a team towards a championship. Hero and Bam Adebayo, they're fine players, but they're certainly not A-list all-stars. Neither is Andrew Wiggins, who somehow, some way, a couple of seasons ago found himself in the all-star starting lineup. The Miami Heat, they have a couple of good pieces with their new look team, but that's really all it is just a couple of good pieces. As a team, they really haven't meshed together much this season in a consistent manner because of the Jimmy Butler situation, and it continues to this day because even though Jimmy Butler's gone, these are the first couple of games with Andrew Wiggins and Davion Mitchell within the lineup for the Miami Heat, and you can just tell on their side, there just isn't too many bucket getters for the Miami Heat, and then defensively, they just can't handle the Boston Celtics. Now, this game started out pretty rough for the Celtics. They shot, of course, 2 of 18 from 3 in the first quarter. They shot 24% in the first quarter, but you saw the rest of the game outside of the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, the game was already finished going into the fourth. I mean, this was another 20-plus point lead for the Boston Celtics going into the fourth quarter. And ultimately, it was really those second and third quarters where the Celtics took off. The second quarter, the Boston Celtics completely turned around their three-point barrage, and it was 7 of 14 from 3 in the second quarter. And the Boston Celtics, it looked like this could be one of those games where we come out and go, oh, and no Jaylen Brown, no Drew Holiday. The energy can seem a little lacking there at times, especially on the offensive end of the floor. I thought the offense was very stagnant at the beginning of around because the Miami Heat, they just didn't have the horses to really keep up with the Boston Celtics in this particular matchup. And if this is a playoff matchup later on in time, it likely will be either the 1-8 or the 2-7 matchup. That's very, very likely. And in that scenario, last year, we wanted to sweep the Miami Heat in round 1. It took us 5 games, game 2 at the Garden. We won't say anything about that. But this season, this Boston Celtics club, I mean, they're still very, very they're very ahead of the Miami Heat at this point in time. And the Heat, they are far from what we saw in 2023, 2022, and even 2020 when they gave the Celtics a real battle in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Miami Heat are no longer threats to the Boston Celtics, and it was just we saw another example of it yet again tonight.
Yeah, honestly, just to go off that really quick, tonight it was one of those nights where, lately this season, we've been very, star reliant, Drew, Derek White and Tatum and Brown. Last year, you look at the team and you had big games every game, from Hauser and just guys stepping up off the bench. And I feel like this year it's been very star heavy, star driven. And tonight was a night that really reminded me of last season. We had Hauser step up. We had Pritchard step up. E. White continues to shoot the ball well, which is a great sign for Celtics fans. Early on, we talked about Derek White, not confident, couldn't shoot the ball, didn't even want to shoot it. Now we see him, no hesitation, just throwing him up there like he did last year, and he's drilling shots after shots. And it's a great sign. We have Hauser, Pritchard, Jason Tatum's been on a tear the last few games. It's a great sign to see because, like I said, no Drew Holiday, no Jaylen Brown. Could have been an easy game that we just roll over, make excuses, don't want to play. But what do? We look like the 2024 Boston Celtics who won the championship with all that depth down the lineup and guys stepping up and honestly just doing their job. That is what I really take from tonight. Everyone did their job. They played their roles. We had 17 points from Derek White, something like that. And that was a normal last year, right? We had 13 to 17 points from Derek White. That was a normal. And now we're starting to see it again from D. White, and it's a great sign if you're a Celtics fan. And same with Pritchard, he's been on it, he's been doing his thing. But tonight was a game that our bench stepped up, and all of our players down the entire lineup, offensively and defensively, I think really played well today.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Mazzulla is in that locker room right now salivating at the fact that the law of averages were on full display tonight. Celtics, 2 of 18, Seamus, you said it to start this game off, and then they started to fall, and the looks were there. I thought, I think the first quarter, the looks weren't great that they were getting. I did think they were kind of forcing a lot. But then I think Hauser, it was funny, Randy, we were talking about this before the show started. Jaylen Brown, and we've talked about this on the show, I mean, very often. Jaylen Brown, if there's one thing that guy knows how to do, it's to start the game and get this team up and going. I mean, his aggressiveness to get into the paint, the energy trickles down. He's the energy shifter for a reason, right? And we were missing that tonight. And you could kind of tell that the guys, it looked like, I was kind of with you, Seamus. It kind of felt like, here we go again, right? Following a win, here comes the Celtics. They're down a couple guys. They're a little lazy, they're a little sloppy. And, they didn't come out. And then here comes Hauser. 4 big threes in that first quarter and a half, or 5, I want to say. And it really set the tone, and it set the energy for this team. So I really liked what they did on the offensive floor post first quarter. Defensively, I mean, this is a game that if you don't show up defensively, you lose. And I mean, you talk about, you want to draw positives out of the recent stretch out of Boston. Yeah, sure, offensively, their shots are falling. We know this team, what they can do when their shots are falling. What really makes this team and takes them to the next level, guys, is what they can do on the defensive end of the floor, too, to pair it with their offense. Tonight, I mean, I thought Miami got some good looks. Like you said, Seamus, this team doesn't really have a lot of, bucket getters, guys that can go out there and really put the ball in the basket. I thought Burks was good tonight for Miami. But outside of that, Bam's not really a guy that can go and give you 25 to 30 when you need it. And tonight, the Celtics, I thought, played some suffocating defense. 85 points, guys. I mean, in the modern NBA right now, if you're scoring 103, you're most likely losing the basketball game. So for the Celtics to win by 20, nearly 20, with scoring 103, I mean, guys, defensively, I mean, it was big time tonight for the C's.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the second time this season we haven't allowed the Miami Heat to reach 90 points.
Yeah.
What was it, 89 last time? This is 85.
Right. Yeah,
this is payback for 2023 and 2020.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Shane, because it's like when you allow a team 85 points, I mean, there's no excuse to not win a game. We're not playing in the 1960s anymore. If you let up 85 points, that has to be a win. You have to win that. And really, for me, what it came down to tonight, and I talked about it a little bit with you guys, a couple games back, is 2 words: one shot. When you allow a team one shot and you get your defensive rebound, you automatically put yourself at such a high advantage over, and then, we're on the offensive glass, we're getting second chance buckets, and they're getting one shot. And that one shot tonight, really, I don't think Miami had many quality looks. I think our closeouts were great. I think Al Horford, once again, I'm going to say it again, Seamus, that Al Horford out on the perimeter, yes, he's old. Yes, his knees might not be great. But I think Al Horford is one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA right now. And I'm going to stand by it. He's had multiple games where it's just, he doesn't go for up fakes. He stays in front of his man. He forces passes. And I think that right there, what I just said, is one of the most underrated defensive mindsets you can have. If you can just force your man to pass the ball, that's a win. That is a win. And Al Horford right now, and a lot of those perimeter defenders are doing a great job at it. And that directly correlates to really only allowing a subpar team 85 points. But regardless of the team, 85 points for an NBA team, that's just that's just insane defense. I don't care what team you are. I don't care who you have. Only scoring 85 points in an NBA game, honestly, for Miami, it's just kind of unacceptable, really. You got to find a way to score more points if you want to win at this level.
Yeah, and you look at some of Miami's best players tonight, really out on the floor. And of course, we know Tyler Hero wasn't out there, but if you go down the list, I mean, Andrew Wiggins, 3 of 12 from the floor tonight. Bam Adebayo, 6 of 17. And Rob, you already mentioned he's not really the guy to go out there and really get the Miami Heat buckets, but that was the Miami Heat part of their problem tonight was the fact they didn't really have that true bucket getter for the moments in which they didn't have any offense within their system. And I will say this is you kind of see one side or the other the Celtics have as of late. You saw against the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks, they were playing with a little bit more energy after the trade deadline, knowing all the negative news surrounding themselves, but a couple of new players on the lineup, a couple of players who went away from the lineup. The Mavericks were playing with a different energy surrounding themselves. Yet the Miami Heat, this is the other side of teams going through the trade deadline. Of course, we should note the other night, Anthony Davis was not playing for the Mavericks in that game, despite the blowout at the TD Garden. But tonight, the Miami Heat, there's the other side of a trade deadline team where it's just kind of a random accumulation of assets the Miami Heat gather after the Jimmy Butler trade and even the PJ Tucker trade, which really the Jimmy Butler trade was just that huge 5-team deal. So they ended up with Davion Mitchell and Andrew Wiggins and Kyle Anderson out of that deal. But if you really look at it, it's a random lineup for the Miami Heat tonight, and it feels as if they didn't all know how to play with one another quite yet. And just going down the list again, like Khalil Ware, 4 of 12 tonight. He's a center. I mean, 4 of 12 when you're shooting 4 of 12 as a center. That's not great out there. The only player who really shot well for the Miami Heat, two players, was Alec Burks. He was 5 of 7, and then you have Duncan Robinson who only took 3 shots. He was 2 of 3. Everybody else, Jovic, 4 of 11. Davion Mitchell, 2 of 8. You have Kyle Anderson, 0 of 5 tonight, another trade deadline acquisition. Terry Rozier, 4 of 12 off the bench. And Pelle Larson, only 1 of 5. So literally every player on the Miami Heat, despite Duncan Robinson, who took 3 shots, and also Alec Burks, who only took 7 shots, just shot the ball terribly tonight. And that really shows the stifling Celtics defense, because you're going to have off shooting nights from a team in general and from players in general, but it's when it's the entire team, that means the defense is ultimately doing something right and really forcing some of those tough shots. And the Celtics, they were able to do that with their defense tonight. And it really reaches the level of where we know the Celtics defense can go, because this was a matchup in which the Celtics could have, or really should have, taken advantage of, and they did. I shouldn't say could have, because the Miami Heat, like I just said, they're discombobulated from what they just did at the trade deadline. And the Boston Celtics, we've been talking about it as of late. They need to be hanging their hat more on the defensive end of the floor. Yes, we know we're very offensively talented, especially from beyond the arc, but defensively, that's where championships are really won. If you can't get a stop, you're not going to win a championship. And really, the best defenses win the championship almost every single season. And the Boston Celtics fell off in that category at the beginning of this year, but we see in games like tonight the true potential of the Boston Celtics. And I think we're actually starting to see it more as of late.
Yeah,
That's
what's interesting about what you kind of said, that, on the defensive side, we're just very locked in. And one thing I've kind of noticed on this team is, myself included, we give a ton of credit to guys like Jaylen Brown. I've always been on Jaylen Brown about how good his defense is. Derek White, we know he gets up there. But another guy that I think it's starting to become time to recognize him as, one of the elite defenders in the league is Jason Tatum, really. And we talk about his offense, his playmaking ability all the time. But what goes under the radar for Jason Tatum, really? His ability to block shots. I mean, I saw him block 2 shots today, and I can almost promise they aren't even talked about, because look at his stat line, 33, 8 and 2. Yeah, no one cares about his defensive end right now. But I think that's something that really separates good players from the greats. Their ability to not only just make, but get back, make the dirty plays, play defense, get rebounds. And I think right now that is one of the most underrated aspects of Jason Tatum's game.
And I think when you look at this team as a whole, right, defensively, there's not many weak links you can pick out and go after. Like Pritchard, like you can go after Pritchard, but it's not going to be easy because of how good he is at pressuring the ball. Hauser's really the only guy that I can think of where you can really pick out. I mean, and Sam does a pretty good job for what he needs to do in isolation, because he does get picked on a good amount. So in terms of an isolation defender, I mean, he's not terrible. So even still, like when you look at this team, there's not a lot of guys who you can, right, like you can run the Celtic style killer whale offense, right, you want to call it, against these guys. But I think and Seamus, and Randy, I completely agree with you. But for me, it's right, like it's an effort thing with defense, right? So many times, even on the Jason Tatum, side of this, we see him sometimes, a lot of the time, actually just have mislapses defensively. And it's one of in those types of games when he's having those, when he's just kind of not fully there. I think tonight Tatum woke up. I think recently the Celtics have woke up. And Seamus, you look at this Celtics slide, right? And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the defense is kind of the surprising factor. I mean, the Celtics under Joe Mazzulla have had very good defenses. I believe 2023, they were top 5. And last year, I believe they were the league's best or second best defense. I know Dallas in that last 30 games just really, really turned it on defensively. But guys, I mean, I'm so with you. When you look at the Celtics team, what's really going to do it this year for them are they going to be able to turn it on defensively? Because again, 103 points is not an offensive masterclass, right? This team, the Celtics did not come into this game and put up 140, 150, right? With making 28, right? This was a pretty ugly offensive game in terms of what the Celtics can do. But I mean, you look at it, it's like, oh, wait, we forget. Yes, Miami, they struggled offensively, right? There was a couple of shots that could have dropped, but even still, to win the game, I'm going to say that, I'm going to be broken record on that, guys. Hate to say it. To win the game by 20 with only scoring 100, I mean, that's elite level stuff, guys. And I think you have to credit the defense. And Randy, I agree. I think you have to credit Jason Tatum, who tonight is the SeatGeek player of the game. This is perfect. What a segue. Guys, before we talk about Tatum, though, I just want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the postgame show, SeatGeek. Guys, SeatGeek is the best ticketing app out there on the market. They have you covered for all live events in your area. Guys, the Celtics, it's getting to crunch time, and they are playing some pretty damn good basketball right now. There is no better time to go watch this team live in your area. Use code Celtics Weekly at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. That link will be in the top of the description down below. Guys, let's talk about, again, a huge shout out to Siki. Let's talk about Jason Tatum, man, because right now this guy's on a heater. And, so many times you look at the box score with Tatum and it feels like he quietly gets you 30. Tonight, well, it was loud and it was vocal from JT. He played with a chip on his shoulder in his showdown on the box score, guys. 33 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. He added a block in there, shot 50% from the floor. Struggled a little bit from downtown. He was 4 of 9 at one point, and then a couple of heat check side steps didn't go his way. And he finished 4 of 12. Now, guys, you look at Jason Tatum, you look at the summer he's had, and then you looked at the year he's had. The dude has been a straight killer for the Celtics this year. And tonight in particular, he seems to be becoming a little bit more vocal. And excuse my language, but I have always said that when Jason Tatum plays, with an FU mentality, he is truly on another level. Now, it doesn't mean he needs to be like that every night, because Tatum's going to be who Jason Tatum is, right? I'm not asking him to be somebody else, but there is a clear indication. And tonight in that third quarter, guys, 20 points in that third. And man, oh man, was it loud. He was letting Miami hear it on just how good Jason Tatum is, guys. Now, this has been an absolute, we talked about it, 40 in New York, guys, just the other night, right? He's followed it up with a 33-point performance against the Miami Heat on the road. Is Jason Tatum proving something to you guys right now, or has this has already been known?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you look at tonight's performance and like I said, great, 32, but really what stood out to me was the defense. And he was playing with his food. He was taking ISO step back threes. And like I tell you guys all the time when we talk about how we're just shot talking, that Jason Tatum's the only guy that I will be fine with taking any shot. Because I've seen him hit. Because I've seen him hit. You got the 1 foot fadeaway.
Right.
You got the 5 feet behind the 3-point line, hand in his face. You see him go to the hoop. So he's the one guy really that I can accept with almost every shot. But
All right, I'll take almost. We can agree on almost.
not only was it just on the defensive side of things, but I think really what got Tatum going when he really didn't have much going for him in that first half was he was getting the high pick and roll with KP up top, and then when you get Jason Tatum one-on-one heading towards the hoop, and you got a big on him one-on-one, nobody is stopping that. And they talked about Robert Williams in the broadcast, actually, how, after 3 years, Robert Williams finally, he finally figured out how to guard drop coverage one-on-one with a forward coming at you one-on-one towards the paint. And that's where Tatum's game, I think, excels so much when you set him a high screen and you don't jam the screener and you allow Tatum to come downhill. Because who's stopping, a 6'9" power forward coming at you one-on-one? It's not happening. You're going to get dunked on, or if you do get a stop, the defense is going to be scrambling. There's going to be a pass, a kick out. Someone's going to have an open three. And for a team like the Celtics, having an open three, it's basically just a free bucket. So that's what's so difficult about defending the Celtics team is when you have Tatum commanding the offense, kind of like he did tonight. It's almost impossible to defend this team because you try and go at him with two guys, someone's open, there's going to be a three. You try and go one-on-one with him, he can step back and kill you from just about anywhere on the floor, or he can burn you and post you up in the paint. So that's what's so tricky about guarding Jason Tatum. And I really think tonight it kind of showed. I was watching the game with some of my buddies, and the first quarter or first half hit, and I think he had like 9 points, something like that. And we were
quiet.
Something like that. I don't know. We were sitting like, okay, it's still a game at halftime. When are we going to see Jason Tatum really show that, okay, I am the MVP. I don't need Jaylen Brown. I don't need Drew Holiday. I can lead a team. I can carry a team. I don't need all this help around me. And I think in that third quarter, we saw that firsthand.
Yeah, Jason Tatum, I think you really highlighted it there, Randy, where he's a multifaceted player. When you put two on him, you already mentioned this, he's going to be able to make the right decision every single time and pass to the open man, or really pass to the best decision in which really gets somebody open off of a hockey assist. And then the other way, if you just have Jason Tatum one-on-one, the Celtics and every team at this point is just every modern NBA team is good at really creating the switches in which they want, the mismatches in which they want. And then after that, it's Jason Tatum step back three, Jason Tatum sidestep three, Jason Tatum going down the hill, either dunking it or finishing it home for two, or even throwing up a lob at the rim if he's running the pick and roll. So Jason Tatum, just his multifaceted play out there is what's very, very impressive about Jason Tatum this season, and really the development within his game, because just a couple of years ago, Jason Tatum didn't have all of this in his game. He was more of he wasn't necessarily a one-dimensional player, I will say, but right now that he's adding dimensions to his game, and where he's on a particular night like tonight, he's a scorer, and even at Madison Square Garden, he is really that bucket getter. 40 points at MSG, 33 tonight. But in some of the games prior to these big scoring matchups, he hasn't had to score the ball a ton because he's really making the right decision for others. But yet when the opportunity comes his way to actually go out there and get buckets, he's doing that for the Boston Celtics. So on the offensive end of the floor, he's been the focal point. Jason Tatum's been the focal point all season long for the Boston Celtics. And really, he's been the main guy creating points for this team in many different ways, whether it's himself scoring the ball or really passing to other players in order to get them in the right situations to score the ball. And that's where Jason Tatum's game has just reached a whole new level, is the fact that no matter how you guard Jason Tatum, he's going to find a way to create points for the Boston Celtics. And really going back on the other end of the floor, we talked about this a little bit with Jason Tatum already defensively, but he's really been this season in terms of his defense. He hasn't been as good in the past for portions of this season, particularly during the stretches in which the Celtics as a whole were not very good on the defensive end of the floor. It's really been the inconsistencies, but as of late, Jason Tatum and the entire team, when they put in that effort on the defensive end of the floor, this team should be one of the best defensive teams in the entire league, if not the best defensive team in the entire league, because you have Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, if we really watch him out there, he can defend pretty well every position. He can defend smaller guards because he's quick enough to defend those smaller guards, and he can even defend some of the bigger bigs because ultimately Jason Tatum, with his length and athleticism and his physicality, I mean, he was guarding Evan Mobley the other night. We think Evan Mobley, the Twin Towers in Cleveland with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, but Jason Tatum, I mean, you really look at Jason Tatum next to Evan Mobley, they're nearly the same size. And so Jason Tatum, that's a very underrated aspect of his game, the fact of how big he really is out there on the floor and what type of players he can guard and what positions he can guard out there. So that's where Jason Tatum, he's just reaching a whole new level right now. And we're seeing him really ascend into his prime. And that's why Jason Tatum ultimately is still an MVP candidate and why the Boston Celtics can really go where they want to go. Yes, this is a great all-around team for the Boston Celtics, and they really won it on team basketball last year. They won the championship on team basketball, the Celtics did. But every single championship team usually sees an MVP caliber player on their roster. And for the Boston Celtics, that is undoubtedly Jason Tatum. He didn't walk away the finals MVP last year, but that was because every defense was hounding Jason Tatum. And what did that open up? Oh, right. Jaylen Brown over here to go and attack and just go and get his points and get his stats and him take away all the accolades. Well, Jason Tatum, if he wasn't around, all that attention would have been on Jaylen Brown. And then after that, who else is really getting it within the Celtics lineup? I'm sure it would have been somebody else, but Jason Tatum, that's just his impact. Even when he's not making an impact, he's making an impact for other players. But tonight we see just himself, 33 points, 8 rebounds. The rebounds, Rob, you highlighted a couple weeks ago when he's really getting after it on the board. You can tell Jason Tatum is getting after it both defensively and just with his physicality out there. So great performance from Jason Tatum tonight. And all of a sudden, these last couple of games for Jason Tatum, I mean, he's really starting to put together those MVP candidate boosting streaks once again after kind of fading away a little bit there in January. He's coming back now in February.
Yeah. Let me just end with this really quick, Rob. Yeah, like you said, he's building some momentum, and I think really this statement kind of just summarizes all of Celtics Nation, right? When you talk about Jason Tatum, right? He may not be there when you want him, but he'll always be there when you need him.
Right. What was that? There's a game 6 in Philly. I forget who was on the call. Oh, who was on that call? Oh my God, he went for 14. What did he say? He's not always there when you call, but he's always on time. It's not always on time, but always there when you call.
No, it sounds like a Mark Jones statement. Right
Mark
there.
Jones. There it is. There it is. Mark Jones. Absolutely, it was Mark Jones.
He's got all the one-liners down.
He does.
My favorite one. Oh, and Jaylen Brown is so deep into his bag. He's reaching for the fries at the bottom. That was the best one. That was against the Philadelphia 76ers too.
Oh, he's got some good. He stole his cornbread's another. Oh, he's good. He's good. But I agree. And Seamus, you took the words right out of my mouth. In terms of people don't appreciate, and maybe it's because you're starting to see more of it in the NBA, but Jason Tatum is a traditional power forward sized NBA player with the skill set of a guard. And you start to think to yourself, like, geez, like, who does that kind of remind? It's Kevin Durant almost. And it's like, and you start to think about this of like, maybe it's due to the time that we're in. You see a lot of these bigger guys, Paolo Banchero, even coming up, you got Cooper Flag. You see so many of these, 6'8" to 6'10", big wings who really can handle the ball. And it goes, I think, undervalued with Tatum in terms of his value to the game. I mean, Randy, you highlighted it. That Jason Tatum high pick and roll has to be one of the, you talk about it in terms of, the Luka isolation or, the Embiid post up or that Jokic high post look when he's on the free throw line. I mean, in terms of when you're a big man and you have a 6'9", 200, he's listed, I want to say 215. I don't believe that. He's probably 230. And you got a 6'9", 230 pound wing with the skill set of a guard coming downhill at you where he can burn you from the 3-point line, he can burn by you and finish at the rim, and he can stop on a dime and pull up for them. All 3 levels of the floor. Tonight, you saw Tatum do just that. I mean, he has developed in his development a lot like Jaylen Brown is so clear. I mean, every year he's added something to his arsenal. And this year, it kind of feels like he's tied it all together and he's becoming really that all around versatile player that we know he could have become. And it's kind of cool as a Celtics fan watching Tatum here in year 8. You've seen it every game, every year, every moment. It feels like you've kind of seen him chip away at it. And now here he is in year 8. He's 28 now. This is supposed to be the start of your peak of your prime as an NBA player. It's a 5-year window where you really, the next 3 years is where you gain the knowledge, right? You hit 30 and you're still physically in your prime, and then you get the knowledge of, okay, the game is really playing at slow motion for me. You know what happens before it even happens. It'll be cool to see Tatum when he's like that. But right now he's in his physical prime. The handle he's got, the ability to shoot the ball he's got, guys. And tonight, I mean, we saw it against New York. New York was a little bit different than it was tonight. I mean, tonight he really did a great job getting into the paint. And for me, I've mentioned the rebounds, but when Tatum is going and driving downhill, and that's how he's starting his game, right? That's how he's getting going. I mean, the whole floor opens up for him, guys. And tonight you saw that from him. And I mean, it was just huge.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned guys like Kevin Durant, and I don't want to sound biased here, but I'm gonna. But when is it going to be time that this whole debate is just over? The thing to me that separates Jason Tatum from Kevin Durant is he is just as skilled on offense as Kevin Durant, if not more skilled. He's developed just as good, if not better, as Kevin Durant from mid-range, and now I believe Jason Tatum is 100 times better of a 3-point shooter than.
Well, can I say something, Randy? I'm going to say this. It's starting to get really quiet in the terms of the Jason Tatum. I mean, because there was some really he the Olympics and all that happened. I mean, and again, you shouldn't pay too much attention, right, to the online world in terms of what's being said, or really I take with what the national media says just with a grain of salt, because again, they're not watching every moment of every game. However, they're still knowledgeable, but there were some questions about this guy, rightfully or wrong, right? And I want to say, guys, it's starting to get really, really quiet. I mean, there's not much you can go at this guy for right now. And he did it all just by his play. I mean, it's getting really quiet.
For me right now, like you mentioned, the whole Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum debate, it's just silly. It's silly. They have the same skill sets on offense and defensively. Now, like we mentioned, Jason Tatum has developed a defensive skill that I think Kevin Durant just never had. So offensively, you can argue, right? Defensively, Jason Tatum, he's been criticized so much. Oh, he gives up on plays. He doesn't get back. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't this. He doesn't that. What have we seen all year out of Jason Tatum when the rest of the Celtics, have been lazy or just trigger happy, just shot chucking? We have seen Jason Tatum still have an all-around great game. Yes, he's human. He's gonna have stinkers. I'm sure he's had plenty of stinkers this year. But who has it been every game, regardless of the score, who comes out and doesn't roll over? He's not just lazy. He doesn't give up on plays. It's been Jason Tatum every single game. And that is what I think separates Jason Tatum from Kevin Durant.
Well, speaking on the conversation of Kevin Durant real quick, Jason Tatum passed him up in 2022.
22. Yep. Yeah, I was waiting.
Come on, he dominated him. We talked about this, the game in March that year, and then the playoff series. You sweep them right off the map. I mean, come on, the Nets and Kevin Durant that season, they were not title contenders for all the messiness that went on, but ultimately in that first round series, I mean, it was Jason Tatum's series. He was the best player in the series with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. out on the floor. So that conversation to me was settled a long time ago. And that's what ultimately we mentioned the Olympics just now and all the internet criticism. That's what made the Olympics very confusing. I mean, yes, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, they all went out there and really had themselves performances at the Olympics and showed that the trust should have rightfully been in their laps with them, even though maybe some of the minutes were a little maybe I don't want to say unfair, but I think we did have Jason Tatum out there on the bench. He was a better player than Kevin Durant and a better option. But Kevin Durant maybe had more of the history behind himself and even more of the knowledge on how to play, say, next to Steph Curry and even play off of LeBron James a little bit more seasoned of a player to play off ball. We forget about that, about the Olympics, where Jason Tatum, he wasn't necessarily the primary ball handler within the Olympic setting, but still, over the summer, Jason Tatum received all this hate from what happened in the Olympics, and even we go back. I already mentioned Jason Tatum. All the attention during the finals run last year was on Jason Tatum,
Right.
and that really opened up opportunities for everybody else to go out and get theirs. That opened up opportunities for specifically Jaylen Brown, and then after Jaylen Brown, it was guys like Derek White. It was guys like Jrue Holiday in the playoffs, and even Al Horford at different points in time. We think about Al Horford in Game 5 against the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. He put on a career performance in that game for his age. Jason Tatum, after the summer, after getting all of this criticism for really no reason whatsoever, I mean, sitting on the bench behind Kevin Durant and having all the attention on him in the playoffs and not winning Finals MVP. I mean, he's come out and put up his best season of his entire career this year, and he's reached a whole new level to his game that this is, to me, we have to remember later on in time when there's I'm not going to say there's going to be a series or a game or multiple games where Jason Tatum, he's going to be questionable to the whole public again. But if there ever is a question about Jason Tatum, once again, we just have to point back at this stretch of time and go, well, this is what Jason Tatum's true ability is. Now it's even how it was last year, because Jason Tatum, I don't think he was even this good last year, but he certainly had a lot of these abilities, even with last year's team. And it's just crazy how different the narrative can change over time from positive to negative, because right now, Jason Tatum, you look at him and go, how are people ever talking about this player or raising concerns about this particular player? Because he has everything you'd want within your star franchise player, from the loyalty to the franchise to the ability to handle the ball as a 6'10" wing, the defensive aspects of himself. Jason Tatum has it all. And really, Jason Tatum being on the Boston Celtics, that is why, again, I'm going to reiterate, they're championship contenders, and they're going to be championship contenders almost every year under the reign of Jason Tatum, because he is that guy in the NBA. I mean, he is really amongst the elite NBA players, and he's reached that level. I mean, he's safely a top 5 NBA player today.
Oh, for sure. And you know what, real quick, Randy, I just want to say this. Going into a playoff series, I think there's probably only 2 teams that you're going into that playoff series going against and think to yourself, okay, we don't have the best player, right? At least it's not a conversation for debate, right? Like Jokic, Giannis, Milwaukee, Denver, you're going to that series. And again, I still think there's a debate around Giannis. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but you're going into that series, right, against pretty much every other team in the NBA, thinking to yourself, okay, we probably got the best guy in this series, right? Yeah, and I think when you look at it like that, you start to see it more clearly. And, Seamus, you said something that's actually very, very interesting. The narrative switches quick, and it does. In today's NBA, guys, the narrative can switch on a player. I mean, look at Anthony Edwards. I mean, just 7 months ago, this guy was the next it. And here comes a rough stretch. Again, rightfully so. The guy's 23. He's figuring out the league. He's getting better. He's growing. He's going to have breaking news. There's going to be a couple more rough stretches before Anthony Edwards reaches the mountaintop, right? But that's kind of the unique part about the NBA is it takes time with these guys, with these younger players to get into their full true potential. For Tatum, he was that guy before. He was that 23-year-old that was new and shiny and going against LeBron in the playoffs and Durant and beating the defending champions. And then we saw him fall and fail, and then it gets the narrative switches just in a couple weeks. And a very interesting point, Seamus, is the narratives. But I guess for Tatum, for me, my point in terms of where he's at in the realm, better than Kevin Durant, Randy, that's for sure. 100% agreed. And again, probably only 2 teams in the NBA where you're checking ball for 7 games and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we don't have the best guy.
Yeah, you know what's interesting?
Well, I'm gonna add on to what Rob just said real quick. My stream's cutting out too here, so it's a little delayed. But ultimately, Jason Tatum, you mentioned, he was that younger player at one point in time. I mean, the narrative when you talk about it switching so quick, I look at 2022. He's putting up 54 points on the Brooklyn Nets. Had a phenomenal first round series against the Brooklyn Nets. Put up 46 points in Game 6 in Milwaukee to save the Celtics season, to send it to a Game 7 where the Celtics eventually beat the Bucks. And then, of course, was that bucket getter in Game 7 against the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals on the road. I still go back and look at that game and go, man, did we have a lot of confidence in that Celtics team? Because going on the road and winning a Game 7 to go to the NBA Finals, I mean, that is something not every team can do. And Jason Tatum was a bucket getter in that game, particularly down the stretch. Celtics were able to pull out that game, make it to the NBA Finals. And then what happens? Jason Tatum has a terrible NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. Then all of a sudden, all of what he just accomplished was wiped away. That Nets series, the Milwaukee series, the Miami series, what he did in the regular season, at the end of that regular season, all of those narratives, just because of one final series where he was facing a team which knew how to guard himself. And you talk about Anthony Edwards being 23. I believe Jason Tatum was 23 at that point in time in 2022.
24.
I don't know.
Off by
24. What is he right now? 26?
26, turning 27.
Okay, so he was what? Yeah, he was 24 at that time.
In that
so
realm.
24. But he was only a couple months into the age of 24 at that point. Right. And that's kind of the same thing of what you're talking about with Edwards, where it's like, those younger players are going to have those stretches, but just how quick the narrative changes. We've already seen it with Jason Tatum multiple times in his NBA career, and that's what makes me think, we're just going to see this yet again. It happens to every single all-time great. I mean, Jordan three-peated, wasn't in the league for 2 years, or really a year and a half. Three-peated again. Kobe Bryant three-peated a couple of years. Is he leaving the Lakers? Oh, can he do this himself? And wins back-to-back 09 and 10. So this just happens in every single era.
Right.
Yeah. Just kind of go back to the whole Jason Tatum narrative thing. For me, at least, that there's really no debating the skill set and the skill sets actually that Jason Tatum has. One of the more unique skill sets in the entire NBA, not just in the East, but in the whole NBA. There's really no debating that. I think right now, what you said, or in the past even, Seamus, the narrative about Jason Tatum and this whole stigma behind the whole Tatum hate really stems back to, I don't even think it stems back to basketball to me. To me, it's, he has this moment in the finals where he's saying, we did it. Everyone thinks he's cringe, right? And then we see him texting Kobe, this one's for you. And to me, that is really where I think this whole stigma of the Tatum hate comes from. Not even from on the court, just people think he's cringe, people think he's this or that. That is really, to me, where this whole tandem of Tatum and the Celtics hate really comes from. And that's just the fact. People just think he's cringe, and I don't know. He backs it all up with his skill. So I don't really understand why it matters what he does.
And you know what? The internet that exists.
They just make shit up. They just make it up. They're like, oh, he screamed during his interview. Oh, must be Kevin Garnett. He's copying off of everybody. It's like they'll just find the littlest thing to go, It's like the internet makes the narratives out there. It's like these aren't true.
And you know what? I also think it's like right now we're in such a unique kind of spot in NBA history because there really isn't a face. Right. Yeah. There's not a guy, I mean, like LeBron still probably, right? But there's not this guy that you can point at and think to yourself, at least not yet, think to yourself, oh, it's his era, right? I mean, personally, I think we're in the beginning of the Jason Tatum era, but like, it's really unique where you have these non-American players who are kind of at the headlines of the league. I mean, look at the past 4 years of MVPs, 5 years of MVPs. They have all been from non-American born players. Embiid, Giannis, Jokic. I mean, that's very, very abnormal. It's a new look at the new guy in town, the next generational great. He is not an American born player. And I think the league right now is looking at them and they, we've never had to deal with this before. The international, how do you, headline an international player in an American born league? So kind of back to how this plays a role in Tatum. I think there's a lot of pressure on this guy to kind of fit everyone's agenda and to fit everyone's narratives and to be the player and the person that everybody else wants him to be, right? In reality, it's just not who he is. Tatum shows up to work, he hoops, he goes home, he hangs out with his kid, and that's his day, right? So I think it's really unique because it's like, I think if you put put Tatum, same thing, back in like 2010, you're kind of seeing him as a much different perspective of this guy. But here he is in this era of the NBA that's so uncertain with what's next and, who's going to be their guy. And it's very unique. Also, you play for the Boston Celtics. You're not going to get that treatment. If JT's playing out there in LA in the sunshine, right, in California, in the crypto.com arena and, with the lake, like all that, it's much different. Or same thing goes for New York. Yeah. But I personally, I love it, but that's just me. I love it. And I don't know if Tatum does, but
no, the internet, I'm tired of the narratives that go on the internet because I think through time, it's very evident if one steps off the internet, steps back onto it or steps off of it, that the internet just creates perception out there. It just creates perception. It's, a whole mass load of people. We're going to shift this narrative one way or another. And a mass amount of people are going to latch onto it. And then from there on, it's almost like this cult following of, well, whatever is said goes. And in terms of, we're following this one idea. Well, it's just going to continue to persist no matter what happens. You can beat the narrative. That's what Brad Stevens always talked about when he was head coach, is beating all the narratives, because out there, a lot of people, they don't even really do their homework. They don't study. They go, what is everybody else doing? Or what is everybody else saying? Okay, I'm going to say the same thing. And it's just a rampant wildfire on the internet from that regard, where to me, when Jason Tatum, when he's doing what he did in the NBA playoffs last year, any of the times in which he's off court, or, we get a true sense of Jason Tatum, say specifically the "we did it" moment. That was a moment in which people will remember forever. There were a ton of kids watching that at the time, and that was their Kevin Garnett moment. It really was. Yeah. And instead, the internet jumped on it and went, oh, look, he's such a copycat. And they went, oh, look at this photo of him in the locker room. He's a copycat of Kobe. Oh, he's copying Kobe's flow in this way. Oh, he's doing this player's little aura thing over here. And it's like, this is the idea of Jason Tatum that just runs like a wildfire through the rest of the internet because, one person said it, or there's this little group that says it, but then all of a sudden all these different people start latching on to the same idea, and no matter what goes down, it's, this is the narrative, this is the narrative, this is the narrative. I mean, even look at a player like Paul George. Now, of course, right now, Paul George is really not the same player in which he was. I'm not talking about today's Paul George, but during the pandemic, Paul George went from playoff P to pandemic P. And he did. And it didn't matter what type of game Paul George had. Now, he was putting up some of the worst games of his entire career at that point in time, but it didn't matter what type of game he had. It was still pandemic P, pandemic P. Oh, this event was going on, and Paul George, he finally had a good game during this event, and nobody was watching anymore. And that's ultimately just, it's the idea behind certain players. Like even Luka right now. We're watching Luka. Everybody thinks, Luka's out of shape. I mean, sure he's out of shape, but does he really look any different than he did last year, the year before? I mean, maybe a little bit from when he was a rookie, but it's ultimately just the idea behind it, and really the continuation of that idea from others who don't really do their research or don't really, speak for themselves, but they speak upon what others are saying. And that's really what Jason Tatum and really a lot of NBA players, I will stress, it's not just Jason Tatum, it's almost every single NBA player out there who has some level of popularity. They suffer from those narratives. They suffer from, oh, there's this general idea about themselves. And now everybody out there, no matter whether or not they do their homework, they're just going to latch onto that. And that's the whole narrative with Jason Tatum. But we all know, covering him on a near nightly basis, Jason Tatum, I mean, there's zero problems with the way Jason Tatum goes about his time in the NBA, whether it's on court or off court or whatever he does inside in the lens of the camera. I mean, Jason Tatum, everything he does, I think he's just one of the more perfect franchise players any team could actually have out there. And I know perfect is subjective, but ultimately, if you're to check the boxes on what you'd want in a franchise player, Jason Tatum checks all of those boxes. And I don't really know the only people in which I would see, oh, you hate Jason Tatum, it's Los Angeles Lakers fans, and it's because he's not in a Laker uniform. That's it. Maybe some Sixers fans out there too.
Because like you mentioned, Seamus, it really is. It's all just narratives and propaganda and just crap that doesn't.
Propaganda is a great word to use for it. It's exactly what it is.
And when you look at a guy like Jason Tatum, there aren't many guys in the NBA that can say they've done what Jason Tatum's done in the amount of time Jason Tatum's done it. So I'm sorry if he's a little cringe or if he's this or if he's that, but the guy can back it up. He can back up whatever he says. So if he's a little bit cringe, but he wins, so what? He's a winner. Who cares what he says? And that's the part that makes me so mad. It's like, if you're going to pick on a guy, picking a guy that can talk the talk, that can talk the talk, but won't walk the walk. Tatum talks the talk and he walks the walk. And that's the part that makes me so mad. It's like the guy can back everything he says. So I'm sorry if he's a little bit cringe or, he says, oh, what would happen if we didn't win? I guess we'll never know. Oh, so what? He's a little bit cringe. Who cares? Like, that's really the reason why all these guys don't like him. Like, come on. Are we serious?
Yeah, they don't like him because he's a winner, by the way. That's exactly.
You stole it from me. You stole it. I was going to say that. If you look, no, it's okay. I'll get over it. But if you look at Tatum's career, the dude has never, he's had one season where his bad was 500 in playing and losing in 5 to the potentially, honestly, if they were healthy, the potential NBA champions that year. But the Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving trio that we saw, the really ever healthy and playing together, was that 5-game stint against Boston in that first round. Was like the healthiest and best we've seen that team. Here, Tatum, he scored 40 and 50 in that. So it's like, this dude has never lost. He never has really experienced what it's like to be bad. And, I think there's a correlation there personally, that's just me, but it's really easy. And again, like you said, Seamus, like, if I'm a Sixers fan or if I'm a Lakers fan, or if I'm, honestly, hate to say it, a Miami Heat fan or, a Knicks, I do not like this dude. He is a killer. He has killed you countless times in the playoffs. If you want to win a championship, you have to go through this guy. He is annoying. He's good, right? Annoying, right? But he's annoyingly good, and he's just a pain to not be a fan of because of how much he wins and how much he beats other teams in the playoffs. And that's what it is. Like, I'm sorry, but little Jason Tatum therapy session. If you don't like Jason Tatum, let me break it down for you. He beats you a lot, and that's why you don't like him. You don't believe the things you say. He just beats you a lot.
Yeah, but don't hate him because of his aura. Hate him because he just beats you. Like I said, everyone hates him because of his aura, right? Because he's not swaggy. He's not hate him because he's good and because he's gonna dominate the league for the next decade. Don't hate him for something that has nothing to do with that at all. Right.
It's all noise at the end of the day. I mean, it's all noise. He's a champ. You're probably not, and that's that. It is what it is. So, now, guys, let's take a look at the lead tracker tonight. My internet threw me off for a loop there at the beginning. So let's take a look. Let's backtrack a little bit to this Miami game here. And let's take a look at this lead tracker, guys. Now, we talked a little bit about it earlier. I would like to touch about it on again, and kind of Boston now, their next matchup is against the Wembanyama in new look San Antonio Spurs there with De'Aaron Fox. So, Boston here, those slow starts kind of creep them in, right? They're kind of playing through them now, guys. Here, as you see, Boston, they trailed by as many as 11 points here early in that, or later into that first quarter, excuse me. And then that started the second quarter. You start to see it, the Sam Hauser effect. He woke up, the Celtics woke up, and it was all green from there. Guys, now tonight, the Celtics, yet again, this is a trend that we're starting to kind of see creep back in. They're doing a great job of once they take the lead, it's cruise control from there, and they are just cruising to victory. They did it again tonight. I personally, I'm interested. Obviously, the Jason Tatum and Derek White second half helped a lot. But for you guys, you look at Sam Hauser, you look at who was kind of the guy that you looked at and helped Boston flip the switch tonight? Because I think there's a couple answers here.
Tonight for me, yeah. Really what flipped the switch for me was kind of just Tate. I mean, it's an obvious answer, but
it's fine.
It was Hauser in the first who didn't allow them to go down by more than 11 because he hit those huge Pritchard in that second quarter. Yeah, you could credit Pritchard. He definitely sparked the offense once they got in a flow, he kind of took over and commanded, made the right plays, allowed others to get involved. And ultimately, yes, that flipped the switch. But what allowed them to continue that run was ultimately Jason Tatum. And it was the Jason Tatum show from the third quarter on. He lit up every category on offense, played insane defense. The guy did it all tonight. And ultimately, yeah, that Tatum really was the guy tonight. And it's nice because when you have a guy and you only need him to really give you that spark in one quarter, and he didn't play horrible those other three. I'm not saying he played terrible. He started off slow. We saw his numbers shooting weren't great. He was doing other things, contributing how he could, whatever. Offensively, the first half wasn't great. But when you have a guy like Jason Tatum and you only really need him to come alive for one quarter, meanwhile, that one quarter is a 20-point quarter. That's not a big deal. That is huge. Sometimes when you have a guy take over a quarter, you get you 10, 12 points. You're like, all right, he lit it up in the third quarter. Whatever. When you get a guy to give you 20 points in one quarter in a game that I don't want to say was hindering and was close, but it wasn't really, they were heading in the right direction, and Tatum kind of just pushed him over the mountain, So it's just nice having a guy who you can really count on. It's nice having a guy that can have a really bad turn it around in 12 minutes. That's what I think I'm getting at right now, where he's basically non-existent or not really a factor for half the game, and then he just comes alive, and it's like game over, the game's over. So that's really what I think I'm getting out of this.
Well, yeah, we talked about Jason Tatum a lot on this post game, but I'm going to flip the conversation over to a couple of other players such as Sam Hauser and Al Horford, because really those two players in terms of a scoring presence. Now, those two players, they combined for over 30 points tonight. And Hauser and Horford, they really have not been that scoring presence for the Boston Celtics all season, and particularly Sam Hauser. We need to see more out of him in terms of making that three-point shot. And really in that second quarter, Sam Hauser started to do that for the Boston Celtics. And that's what you could say actually flipped this game. Yes, you could say Jason Tatum just totally ran ahead of the Miami Heat and blew him out of the water and was the main factor in the Boston Celtics winning this game tonight. But other players played factors as well, and one of them was certainly Sam Hauser in that second quarter, being able to hit the shots in which he did and really contribute to the Boston Celtics, creating that run to eventually give them the lead before halftime, the Celtics the lead over the Miami Heat. But also Al Horford. As of late, Al Horford, I mean, he is turning up to a new level at this particular stage in his career, and to a level that we really didn't expect, because we've talked about him defensively already, but offensively, he's starting to hit his three-point shot efficiently, and we're actually seeing some low post, I shouldn't say not necessarily in the low post, but near the bucket opportunities for Al Horford out there. And when you get those type of scoring games from Al Horford, I mean the Celtics, they're a little tough to beat because you're getting contributions from Jason Tatum. There's no Jaylen Brown tonight, no Drew Holiday. But if you're getting contributions and double figures out of multiple Celtics players in the lineup, and ultimately Al Horford is one of those players. I mean that's when the Celtics they're running out and running ahead of different teams because Al Horford, he really hasn't been that presence for the Celtics all season long. And when he is, that's just an extra boost to this ball club. And then I already mentioned Sam Hauser himself. He really needs to be the one in terms of the point getting. That really needs to get going for the Boston Celtics off the bench because we know Peyton Pritchard what he can do off the bench for the Boston Celtics, but Sam Hauser in the past he's done a lot more for the Boston Celtics in terms of hitting that outside shot, putting quick points up on the board when he comes into a game. And really, this season, it's been few and far between. Yet tonight, Sam Hauser actually came out, hit his shots, and was able to be the player in which we know can come off the Celtics bench and really fill it up from beyond the 3-point line. So Sam Hauser and Al Horford, I think they certainly, if you look at their stat lines tonight, they're two players you look at and go, okay, they gave the Celtics an extra boost, especially in this game where the Celtics, they only scored 103 points. It's kind of surprising seeing those players score the way they did, but only 103 points. I mean, they score 1/3 of the Boston Celtics points, and the Celtics win by 20. If there's no scoring presence from Hauser and Horford, Tatum could still put up 33. Tatum himself had a third of the Celtics points tonight. And you never know, this Celtic matchup against the Miami Heat could have been a lot closer down the stretch and in the fourth quarter. And you could potentially see one of those low scoring affairs where I wouldn't doubt the Celtics could win, but you could definitely see a different result in terms of the margin of win here for the Boston Celtics. So some of those players, I think we're starting to see them come around just a little bit for the Celtics as of late. We've already talked about, or I should say, we've talked about a lot Tatum and Brown carrying the load for the Boston Celtics, even amidst the inconsistent stretch. Now, Jaylen Brown, he's been a lot more inconsistent than Jason Tatum, but even during the inconsistencies of this season, Brown and Tatum, they were the ones actually carrying the load for the Boston Celtics, and it was guys like, Drew Holiday really not doing too much out there. Derek White not really playing up to his standard whatsoever. Porzingis at times still coming back from that injury. Al Horford really giving you nothing. If Pritchard, he's really been the one sparking that energy off the bench. If he's not giving you anything, what are you actually getting off the bench if you're the Boston Celtics? You know, you're looking at Sam Hauser, who's not been doing anything, and then you're looking at guys like Kata and Cornette, and they're not supposed to be huge scoring presences. They're just supposed to be solid big men. You're supposed to be playing in the rotation for the Boston Celtics. So now we're starting to see more of the role players, more of the intangible role players around the fringes come out and really put up some performances for the Boston Celtics that I really think is helping this team out tremendously, because even Jason Tatum with 40 the other night and with 33 tonight, he would not have been able to just carry the Celtics to a win if it were not for some of his counterparts and his teammates around himself.
Man,
I think also something that's kind of going under the radar, and maybe Rob, you wanted to talk about this later on, and I'm just jumping the gun, but D White, right? Look at a guy like D White in a game like this, right? We haven't even mentioned him, right? Maybe I mentioned him a tiny bit in the beginning, but all we're looking at right now and all we're talking about is Jason Tatum, Sam Hauser, Al Horford. But look at a guy like Derek White. And when you think about a game like this where you have one of your stars drop 33 points and you have other guys contributing, like Hauser, I don't think has shot like this the entire season. Maybe a couple games here and there, but other than that, I think Hauser's been pretty quiet. So yeah, it's easy to overlook. I don't know exactly what he had, but something probably along the lines of 16, 17 points for Derek White. But I think really if we can get Derek White back to where he was last year, clicking on all cylinders, shooting the ball with all the confidence in the world, this Celtics team, I don't want to say it's going to be a cakewalk to the finals, but if we can stay healthy and we can have a Derek White even 3/4, 4/5 of what we had him last year, this team is gonna go from right here and they're gonna be on another level. And I said it before and I'm gonna say it again. We always talk about how KP is our Kevin Durant. I don't think so. I think it's Derek White because when Derek White's on, we can see a 20, 25, 30-point game out of him any night.
Well, I'm going to say this. You guys are getting pretty damn good at this because that is exactly the two directions I was going to take this show was Al Horford and Derek White. So which one do we want to start with? Let's start with Al Horford, guys. Now, Seamus, you alluded to this a little bit earlier. Getting Al Horford the ball down, like in that little, like those easy couple, block areas. You don't want to say necessarily a post-up look, but like it's kind of, that's what it is. It's in an untraditional way. Now, you look at Al, and this is a guy that is in what, year 19 now, I want to say, year 18, drafted 17, drafted 2006. So year 19 here for Al Horford. And I want to say 18, 19. My math's not good. Doesn't matter. He's old. Moral of the story. And 38. There we go. And you look at Al, and, it's a player you expected this, right? You kind of expected retirement last year. I personally, I don't know about you guys, I was personally surprised to hear he was coming back. I was like, awesome. Hell yeah. Love another year of Al. Here we go. And then he's kind of been in and out of the lineup, and he's been you showed his age there in December. And then January was a very quiet month for him. He was hardly ever playing. And then February hits. And you're like, hold on a minute. What's going on here? Like, why? Wait a second. This is the Al Horford we saw about 2 years ago, 3 years ago for the Celtics team. Is he coming kind of back to life? So for you guys, when you look at a player like Al Horford, right, he's in is he saving it? Right? Does he still have stuff left in the tank? Because I'm not going to lie. He's looking really quick. He's looking sharp. His shot is starting to fall again. He's getting back into the paint, in which he's so good at, and getting undersized guards down there and pinning them down in that low post area and getting an easy bucket. Randy, you've alluded to this a lot in the past couple post-game shows, and tonight, defensively on the perimeter, he's looking very, very sharp, guys. So for Al, is this sustainable for him? Is this the Al Horford that we could see kind of bottling himself up, getting ready, ramping up for the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you got a guy that's 38, but honestly for Al Horford, and I'm being so serious when I say, what time start, thinking about Hall of Fame, really? Well, when you think about Horford, all the guys done throughout his entire career in the NBA, he's been a competitor. He's been a winner. He's hustled. He's 38 years old. Yes, he can't go in back-to-backs. But when he's out there, he is out there. He is giving it everything he has. Al Horford, honestly, when he was on the Hawks and they had guys like Paul Millsap and Kyle Korver, you really didn't think Al Horford as one of those guys who was an elite three-point shooter because he had guys overshadowing him like Millsap and Korver, who, yes, they are, Hall of Fame three-point shooters. But when you look at a guy like Al Horford, the guy he's developed his game so much, even beyond the three-pointer. His three-pointer is falling, but he's now before it was kind of like I would only want him shooting open threes. And now it's like he's almost like he can be like a spot up three guy, He can catch and shoot, which is weird because of he has such a slow form that it's like, oh, he's going to get his shot blocked. But really, Al, I feel like has developed almost now as a spot up three guy. He's a catch and shoot guy. He's shooting contested threes and they're falling, and it's really not a fluke. It isn't. People are going to say, oh, he has a couple good games and everyone now at the Hall of Fame three guy. No, he has been a consistent three-point shooter his entire career. And I think now kind of in his later stages, he's developed into now more of a spot up and catch and shoot guy. But like we talk about, and I talk about all the time, it's not just the three. The guy's defense, he's one of the elite defenders in the league, and I always talk about how good of a defender he is on Giannis. The guy is a brick wall, can go toe-to-toe with arguably the best player in the league. And for a guy at 38 years old, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and Al Horford, really, we talked about on the New Year's Eve post game what is going on with Al Horford because in the month of December specifically, Al Horford, all he was doing was shooting threes. I mean, and nearly 80% of his shots came came from beyond the 3-point arc. And Al Horford, even amidst shooting all of those threes, was shooting terribly from beyond the arc and also shooting terribly from the field. And he just wasn't an offensive factor for the Boston Celtics. And there were a couple of concerns raised because we were saying, well, Al Horford, yeah, he's giving you something defensively, but he's nearly an offensive zero right now. If he can't even hit his outside shot, if he's not going to be that low post passer, that low post player who can score down low, which he just simply isn't at this point in his career. If he's not even hitting his outside shot, he's kind of a brutal player to play out there on the offensive end of the floor. Yet, really, this month, these past couple of games here, Al Horford, he's starting to hit that outside shot, and he's starting to kind of diversify his game more on the offensive end of the floor. I think we're starting to see him in the paint a little bit more now, not as a post up player necessarily, but just getting those easy opportunities near the rim, whether they're just some of those dump down lobs or just really getting inside the post and getting some of those ultimately just some of those passes that really set him up for an easy two. I think we're seeing more of that from Al Horford. And then from beyond the arc, I think he's taking smarter threes nowadays. I think that's really a theme with the entire Celtics team right now is the fact that this team is just taking a higher intellect level of threes at this moment in time because we saw even in the first quarter of this game, there were a lot of, Rob, you mentioned there were a lot of forced shots in the first quarter. And we saw that just a lot in December and January. Yet at the end of January, going into February, we're starting to see this team settle down a little bit on the offensive end of the floor and really find themselves some good looks. And Al Horford, that's also on theme for himself as well. He's not really jacking up threes anymore. He's starting to really let it flow to him in the rhythm of the offense. In the rhythm of the offense. I didn't say anything tonight, folks. I didn't say anything tonight.
You haven't. You didn't.
I swear.
But
yeah, Al
me,
Horford, and even defensively, just want to add one more thing. Al Horford defensively
absolutely.
as of late, just lights out. I mean, I cannot believe how well he's playing defensively. His athleticism is beyond what we thought it could be at 38 years old. And just the fact of the matter is, Al Horford, he's that physical player who can guard bigger players. And he's going to be, the Giannis stopper later on in time, potentially, but also just against guards. I mean, he doesn't let guards just go right past him. You'd think that at this point in his career, he'd be like a DeAndre Jordan level of player where DeAndre Jordan gets out there and all teams want to do is just switch on to DeAndre Jordan, switch on to DeAndre Jordan and get that mismatch. Well, Al Horford, they might switch on to Al Horford, and then Al Horford, he has that length and he really just has that still athleticism at this point in his career. And he really keeps guards at bay. He does from beyond the arc, and he doesn't just let them go around him. And he's such an experienced seasoned player too that he knows, if this guy kind of has a step on me, he knows how to angle himself and leverage himself in order to really go and deter a shot or even get himself a shot block. So Al Horford at this point in time, he's not an all-star center by any means, but what he's doing with this Boston Celtics club at the age in which he is, I mean, it has to be praised to the highest of levels. We talked about it a lot against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but even this game tonight, Al Horford, he's really starting to put together a nice little stretch of games that really give us some confidence that maybe, just maybe, Al Horford is going to start to reach another level as the playoffs come about, and he knows that this is the point in the season in which, it's my turn to turn up here with the Boston Celtics, and we're going to go out and make this championship run. And Al Horford, we already know he's been through this multiple times in his career. And this is just yet another example of Al Horford potentially seeing that path in front of himself and now going, okay, it's not December, it's not January, it's not playtime anymore. We're really starting to run the race towards the end, towards the title. Still months away, but Al Horford knows what the ramp up period looks like for that. And I think he's kind of preparing for it right now.
Well, and for me, guys, Randy, you said it, right? Al Horford, since he's got to Boston, has always been a great shooter, right? Recently under Joe Mazzulla, he's really taken it to another level. So when the shots weren't falling, you think to yourself, like, okay, is something wrong? But he's kind of turned into a shooter, and shooters have slumps, and that's going to come back around at some point. But for me, defensively, he looks faster. He looks quicker. He looks more agile. I don't think he's looked this good defensively since that 2022 playoff run year where he really just elevated his game to all-star status. I mean, you guys remember in that Bucks series and even the Golden State series, he just took his game to another level there. But like, that's what we're starting to see out of him again. And like these little like random flashes when he subs in, and he just looks energized. He looks quick. He just looks much, much better. Even if that shot wasn't falling, you're sitting here thinking to yourself, well, hold on. Al looks like he's much more energized. And he's got a pep in his step. And, again, like with Al, it's like, okay, especially when you look at the way Luke and Nemi have been playing behind him, it's like, okay, pick and choose with this guy, right? Keep him warm, keep him ready, give him the looks he needs to against the playoff caliber teams, but don't push it. If we haven't played in 3 days and you got Charlotte up next, it's okay. Al doesn't have to play for 5. Like, keep him pick and choose, be smart with him. And I mean, he's really excelled, guys. And another one is Derek White, because Randy, it's funny you say that, right? Because I do think personally Kristaps is the Kevin Durant, right? But I think Derek White is like our KD 2.0, where, and I've said this before, KP sets the ceiling, right? D White sets the floor, where, we're going to be as bad as Derek White. I shouldn't say as bad, but, we're going to be as bad as Derek White makes us, and we're as good as KP makes us. And when Derek White's playing well, guess what? It does not get very bad for this Boston Celtics club, guys. Derek White, we talked about it. Last 5 games here, guys, he's averaging 16.5 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. The shooting numbers are much, much better, guys. 4 of 8 from behind the arc, 50% over these last 5 games. He's shooting 4 per game. He's shooting 8 per game. He's making right around 4 per game, actually 4 on the dot, guys. We've talked about it so much with Derek White, guys. It was in due time. It felt like that he was going to come back to earth and he was going to settle back in. He looks very comfortable, guys, with the ball in his hands. He was commanding the offense tonight. And for me, that's very important when you look at a guy like Derek White in his role within this offense.
Yeah, for me right now, where I am, Derek White is, I said it a couple games ago. He just looks, it's like a complete 360 with Derek, right? He was at rock bottom, and now here we are again, just weeks later. No, it hasn't been that long. Yeah, he had a tough couple of months, but here we are now, weeks later, talking about we're going to get as far as Derek White can get us. And that's the interesting part about this Celtics team, right? Derek White is just one of many all-stars on this team, but yet he's so vitally important to the Celtics team in the long-term run, or in the long run, excuse me. Because Derek White, if we can, like I said, if we can just get even 3/4 of what we had all of last season in this final 3-4 months, however long, hopefully longer, this season will be, then I think we're in pretty good shape. And like I keep mentioning, it really just comes back to confidence. He clearly, I don't know what was going on in the first couple of months, but I don't know if his form was wrong or what was going on, but what we were seeing was a not confident shooter, a shooter that I'll be the first one to admit when shots were going up, even wide open Derek White shots, I was like, great. Here we go. Awesome. I just think not going in. It's a good shot, and that's what I think we saw for a long time for just the Celtics team as a whole. We were taking some good shots. They just weren't falling. Really, they just weren't. And Derek White is a recipient of one of those. He's one of those players that was happening to. And now, like you said, Rob, Celtics are playing better. Shots are falling. Wow. I wonder where the correlation is. Really, like
Derek White.
It's just a credit.
Killer.
To this whole Celtics team. They haven't lost any confidence in D White. Even when he wasn't playing great offensively, he was always present on defense. And now it's time where we are seeing a multi-dimensional Derek White finally, and it's a great thing. It's a thing of beauty for a Boston Celtics fan.
Well, I'll point out something with Derek White and really the rest of the team as well is some of these performances are starting to become consistent happenings for the Boston Celtics and in some of the role players involved. We're not just seeing, oh, one good Derek White game here and then he falls off for 3 games, and oh, another good Derek White game or one good Al Horford game and they're falling off. I mean, some of these role players in which the Boston Celtics have on their roster, we're starting to see it more and more consistently. Even talking about Sam Hauser earlier, I think we're starting to see more of a contribution from him off the bench. We're starting to see Peyton Pritchard. I mean, he's been fairly consistent for most of the season, but during the Celtics' inconsistent runs, Peyton Pritchard he was kind of all over the place. And we're just starting to see a more consistent effort out of everybody on this team. And really, that goes all the way up to the top with Derek White, because Derek White, he's not just having those 1 of 7 performances every single night or every other night now. He's starting to put up a consistent, really, I mean, I should say his average of points this year, right? You look at his average of points, it was right around 16 for most of the year. And that's why people were calling out, oh, Derek White should be an all-star. And that's where the national broadcasters were just exposing themselves for most of the season, where the fact of the matter was, well, yeah, they're looking, it seems as if when they're calling out for Derek White to be an all-star, they're looking at his numbers and not his actual play, because his actual play was atrocious there for 2 months. It really was. It was horrendous. I mean, defensively, he wasn't the same player whatsoever. He wasn't hitting his shots. And on a lot of occasions, Derek White was just a player in which we looked at and went, what happened to him on a nightly basis? The people who are watching Derek White on a nightly basis were wondering, what is going on with this player? Meanwhile, the national broadcasters saw the 16 points per game and went, this guy should be an all-star. He was almost all-star last year. He should be an all-star. Well, it didn't really correlate. The numbers and ultimately the Derek White performances on court, they didn't quite match up whatsoever in terms of the scoring. But now per se, Derek White's numbers, if you look at him across the board on a nightly basis within the stat sheet and his play on court, I would say Derek White, he's starting to put up a more consistent streak of games, just like some of these other role players on the Boston Celtics. And it's really helping the Celtics tremendously. And he's actually coming to play on both ends of the floor. That's what's so important too about Derek White, is not only the offensive end of the floor, but defensively as well. I think we talk about Derek White, being that floor raiser for the Boston Celtics, but it's true on both ends of the floor. We on the offensive end of the floor, we see him settling down, but defensively, I thought in that Mavericks game the other night, I didn't think Derek White was very good defensively that night. I didn't think the Celtics were very good defensively, and I think that can sometimes have a huge correlation on the Boston Celtics. Is if Derek White, if he's not playing out there with effort on the defensive end of the floor, who else on the Boston Celtics is going to be out there playing with effort if Derek White isn't? Yet all the games in which he shows up, you kind of notice the rest of the team shows up as well. And it's not to say Derek White affects the rest of the team in terms of their effort, but it kind of correlates with, oh, if Derek White's showing up or if he doesn't show up, the rest of the team, it kind of gives the whole team a gauge in which we can look at and go, oh, are they here? Are they not here tonight? And Derek White tonight, on this particular occasion, he actually showed up, and I will say he's doing that a lot more as of late, and he's done it really the whole month of February so far, and that's really what the Celtics need to see out of Derek White. They don't want to see the 1 of 7, 1 of 8 Derek White performances where he's shooting all threes and really not diversifying his game from the offensive end of the floor, not getting after it defensively. They want to see the Derek White that's really putting up an effort on the defensive end of the floor, always being in the right positions, always guarding the correct rotation where his spots are supposed to be. And of course, on the offensive end of the floor, just somebody who's being very patient with the ball, always making the correct decision, whether it's shooting or passing. Because there were a lot of decisions earlier this season where, as hurtful as it is to say about Derek White, it didn't seem like he was making the right decision with the ball. He was just kind of chucking up threes out there when he could have been driving to the hole, really making those dump down passes, really throwing up a lob, throwing up a floater, or just making those extra passes leading to the hockey assist. He wasn't making as many of those decisions as we're seeing right now. And I can't really pinpoint what the turnaround was in Derek White's game. And I don't think we can really pinpoint the turnaround for this entire Celtics team, because at the end of the day, it really was this team just needed to show up on a nightly basis. They needed to show their effort on a nightly basis, because we saw this out of them last year, whether it was Derek White and the rest of the Celtics. And it was really just about seeing that and getting that out of them in the same way this season. There was really no one moment where it just went, oh, light bulb flick for the team and Derek White. It just kind of needed to happen progressively. And I think we're starting to see it these last couple of games. Now the Celtics, they're 6-1 in their last 7 games. I mean, that's starting to become a far cry from going back and forth, 500 all the time. We're 5-5 perpetually, and all of a sudden we're 6-1 in the last 7 with one more game to go before All-Star break, and this could be a run in which the Celtics they close out the stretch and go 7-1 in their last 8 games before All-Star break, with only one clunker at home on trade deadline day, which just seems to be an annual occasion, which the Celtics just drop a terrible game.
Right. And for me, I said it earlier this year with Derek White, where he's transitioned to 3-and-D. And, yes, while over these last 5 games, 80% of his shots have come from behind the arc, right? If you're watching the game, and the biggest example of this, right, guys, what was the leagues? I believe the leagues, a second behind Jokic and Murray, the second most efficient and effective play they had. Do we know this? The Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis pick and roll. That was absolutely killer, right? And earlier this year, December, January, Derek White wasn't putting pressure on the defense and Derek White is phenomenal in the pick and roll. His decision-making is really, to see Derek White make mistakes is rare. And he wasn't putting pressure on the defense coming off those screens, guys. If you remember correctly, it was a lot of one dribble pull-up threes, and it was a lot of backing up and swinging the ball. There was no pressure. Tonight, he did it very, very well. He might not be taking the 2. Right? But he's putting pressure on the defense coming off that screen. We're seeing him now run it with Tatum, with Cornette. It's become effective, and he is still very effective alongside his running mate, Kristaps Porzingis, in it, guys. So for me, what's changed with Derek White? Well, he's becoming a playmaker again. He's putting pressure on the defense. Yes, he's still shooting a good amount of threes, but you can tell they're coming within the rhythm of the offense. He's getting much more efficient looks, and he's putting pressure on the defense where he excels at, guys. That pick and roll, he is so dangerous at when he gets downhill and he makes the defense move and collapse and rotate. He's going to find the right guy. He's going to make the right decision. So for me, you look at the difference in just play, right? Maybe not numbers. Obviously, efficiency has gone up, right? Points per game have gone up. But if you look at his numbers, you might think, okay, well, he's still shooting around the same amount of shots and the same amount of threes. Go in and watch how Derek White's playing, guys. You both alluded to it. It is very, very apparent. He looks more confident. He looks more engaged. Defensively, Seamus, I'm so with you there. I don't think he brought it against Dallas, but tonight he definitely brought it, and he's more engaged, he's more active, he's more, handsy, and he's just been really, 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 really effective in the defensive. And he's still 3-and-D wing, but I'm going to put him into 3-and-D versatile guard. He's back there, right? He's really becoming a versatile wing that we know, and versatile guard that we know and love, and is so effective. And like you said, Seamus, he really is the floor setter, right, for this team in just where their floor is at.
Yeah, I mean, he's developed. I think. Well, I don't know if he's developed. I think he's always had it, really, even back to when he was in San Antonio. He's really, he's developed. I'd say he's developed more. This little floater he has, and like you said, when he's coming downhill, right in the face of a defender, he's developed this floater, and I think
the floater's dangerous.
It comes from spacing, and really when he's coming downhill, and it's the 2-on-1, and he has the lob or he has the floater, like you mentioned, he just right play every time. He decides, okay, I have the floater, or okay, the D is committed, and now I have the lob. And like we talked about it with Jason Tatum making the right play, that little high pick and roll with or whoever it may be. It could be Horford, it could be Nemi. When you got a high pick and roll and you got a 2-on-1 coming downhill, It always does, at least of recent. It seems like Derek White just tends to make the right decision every time.
He does. He does. He's killer.
Yeah, and that's really what highlighted his game when he came to Boston is the fact that he was somebody who really was an unselfish player within the Celtics offense and could really get the ball moving on the offensive end of the floor for the Celtics and really just be that good decision maker with the ball in his hands. Because really, when you look at this team before Derek White joined the Boston Celtics via trade from the San Antonio Spurs, you were rolling out guys if you're the Boston Celtics like Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, Marcus Smart. And of course, Marcus Smart and Derek White played with each other for 2 seasons, but all three of those players with the ball in their hands. I mean, for as good as some of those players are, Josh Richardson just recently traded away from the Miami Heat. Dennis Schroeder lands on the Pistons, actually kind of rerouted from the Heat. So we're all talking about Miami Heat players, oddly enough, tonight outside of Marcus Smart. But even Marcus Smart, Rob, you kind of highlighted on the trade deadline special, kind of the fundamental problem with Marcus Smart out there. Even for as good as these players are, they don't always make the right decisions with the ball, and it's kind of a recurring theme with all of them, and it's kind of a, I don't want to say a developmental defect within those players, but they just don't really seem. If you're talking about Schroeder, Richardson, and Smart, they didn't really seem to know how to quite, with the ball in their hands, get the ball moving for the rest of the offense. And I don't want to say they were selfish players, but they just didn't always make the right decisions with the ball in their hands in terms of getting that going and making that extra pass, or really going downhill and kind of making their own leverage as a ball handler with the defense in front of them. They were always kind of a little herky jerky out there, and it was just not a very good mesh with the Boston Celtics. See, there are just key words we can't say on this broadcast. I'll say that right now. Herky jerky. Come on now, folks. Come on. That one isn't bad. You guys will know it. Okay, I'm out of left field with this stuff. I mean, you guys will know it. I'm not throwing it out just to throw it out here. But ultimately, yeah. See, tonight against the Miami Heat, I don't know if tonight's the night. Gotta have Franco on here. Franco, he's
Franco can't keep it together.
I was sad he wasn't. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. Franco and Justin can't keep it together. It's like I have expectations for you guys. Franco and Justin are the ones who can't keep it together.
Mature ones.
Right.
That's saying something. The bar's low.
But ultimately, man, I don't even know what I was talking about here. Marcus Smart, Richardson, and Schroeder. They were kind of all players in the Celtics offense that didn't always make the right decisions, kind of shot the ball too much, dribbled into nowhere, really didn't set up guys the way you'd want to see them set up guys. Yeah, they might have passed the ball, but it was always at the wrong moments of time. And when they would pass the ball, it'd be like, I'm getting doubled, or I'm dribbling into a terrible situation. Well, it's time for me to pass. And really, Derek White, he's more strategic and tactical in the way he goes about the offensive end of the floor. He's a lot more cerebral in terms of when he's passing the ball and his timing. And timing is really a big thing in the game of basketball, and you can see Derek White has that timing within his game. Particularly, you were just talking about it, Rob, in those pick and roll settings with any of the bigs. You see with Kristaps Porzingis, but even when Luke Cornett is out there, Luke Cornett is one of my favorite players to watch with the Boston Celtics because his timing and his positioning out there, I mean, it's really what makes him such a great player with the Boston Celtics. And other people aren't talking about him around the league, but those are just kind of the little things in the game of basketball that can make you go from being good to great. And I'm not saying Luke Cornett is, all-star center or anything, but in terms of his game, we know he's not, he's not somebody who's going to go out there and do some crazy Karl Anthony Towns or Joel Embiid, fadeaway jumpers, or he's not going to be able to dominate in the paint or screen like them and roll like them. But it's just his timing within his game and his positioning. And Derek White, that goes to the conversation of him as well. Luke Cornett was talking about him for a second, but it goes to Derek White's game as well. And that's why the Celtics acquired him such a long time ago in 2022. It really wasn't that long ago, but 3 years, we've already passed the 3-year mark of Derek White now being acquired by the Boston Celtics from the San Antonio Spurs. And it's going to be a trade that we're still waiting to see play out what happens to that first round pick, but it's already resulted in a championship for the Boston Celtics and could very well result in another one this year if Derek White continues this level of play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Celtics, well, guys, they're going to be back in action this Wednesday night against the San Antonio Spurs. It is always a treat to watch Wembanyama come to town. He's honestly become one of my favorite players to watch. Tip-off is going to be at 7 o'clock, guys. It is the last game before a much-needed All-Star break, I want to say. It's been rough in that December and January. Picked it back up towards the end of January and the start of February, which is good signs. But again, tip-off against the San Antonio Spurs is at 7. We'll have you covered for Postgame Live here, guys. As for tonight, the Celtics, well, they went down to South Beach, and yet again, like Jason Tatum said, it's always fun when they go to South Beach. He loves playing down there. 103-85 was your final score, guys. Jason Tatum was tonight's player of the game, 33 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists for JT, guys. Like I said, Boston now 38-16, going to face off against the 23-28 new look San Antonio Spurs with De'Aaron Fox and Wembanyama and company coming into Boston, guys. It is going to be a fun one. Again, after that final buzzer sounds, guys, come right back here to the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show. A little bit shorter show tonight, but we're going to have a longer one on Wednesday. I'm preparing myself because I got a lot I'm excited to talk about within the All-Star weekend. Maybe we'll do an All-Star weekend special. Interesting. All right, we got some.
Hey, that's an idea.
That's an idea. I'm thinking. My mind's working during postgame show. But guys, again, seriously, thank you so much for joining us. As always, guys, I'm Rob. Next to me are my man Seamus and Randy. Quick, right before I close off the show, guys, I'm going to say something. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. I heard this thing, if you mention the like button, it lights up and pops up. I don't know if that's true. And then also turn on post notifications, guys, so you get alerted when we go live after every game. I know I say it, but this becomes a little bit easier. And if you're not already following us on our social medias, they're all down there in the link below. Guys, again, cue that music. Celtics, they're getting a groove here. They're starting to pick up some wins, guys. Until next time, we're going to see you, as always, guys.